Did Helena's Tapestry predict Daenerys? House of the Dragon, warning, spoiler warning. This video contains major spoilers for the House of the Dragon Season 3 finale, Helena's Tapestry, Daenerys Targaryen, and major events from Game of Thrones. If you want to discover these connections yourself, this is your warning. Did Helaena Targaryen actually see Daenerys hundreds of years before Daenerys was born? That is one of the biggest questions coming out of the House of the Dragon Season 3 finale. Because hidden inside Helena's tapestry appears to be an image that looks remarkably like Daenerys Targaryen. And if that interpretation is correct, it changes the way we understand Helena's strange visions. She may not simply be seeing the immediate future. She may be seeing the entire history of House Targaryen, past, present, and future. But there is an important distinction. The show has established that Helaena is a genuine prophetic figure, and the tapestry deliberately connects to the show's larger imagery. However, HBO has not officially released a scene-by-scene explanation saying this specific figure is Daenerys. So the Daenerys identification remains an interpretation, and that makes the mystery even more interesting. Let's start with what we actually know. Helaena has been seeing things that haven't happened yet since the beginning of the series. Her strange comments initially sounded like meaningless riddles, but later, viewers realized that many of them were predictions. By Season 2, Helena's abilities had become much more explicit. She correctly describes events involving Aemon, including his eventual death at the God's Eye. She also appears during Daemon's supernatural vision at Harrenhal, suggesting that her connection to these visions may be much more powerful than ordinary dreams. Showrunner Ryan Condal has described Helaena as someone whose prophetic ability is evolving. The series has deliberately transformed her into a character who can perceive events beyond normal time. And Season 3 takes that idea even further. Helaena begins creating a tapestry that gradually becomes a visual record of the Targaryen story. The important revelation is that her embroidery appears to mirror the tapestry used throughout the show's opening sequence. That isn't just a coincidence. The opening tapestry represents the history and mythology of House Targaryen. Now Helaena is apparently stitching her own version of that history. And this is where Daenerys enters the picture. Among the images fans have identified is a figure that appears to resemble Daenerys standing with a dragon. Some fans believe the image represents Daenerys with Drogon. Others have suggested it could represent the birth of Daenerys' dragons. And there are good reasons for both interpretations. Because Daenerys is arguably the most important Targaryen descendant after the events of the dance, her story eventually brings dragons back into the world after they have nearly disappeared. So, if Helaena really is seeing Daenerys, the image could represent one of the most important events in the entire Targaryen story, the return of the dragons. But why would Helaena see something that happens roughly 2 centuries after her own lifetime? That's where the show's mythology gets fascinating. Helena's visions don't seem to follow normal rules of time. She doesn't necessarily see one event and then another in a straight line. Instead, she seems to experience fragments, images, symbols, people, deaths, and possible futures. That means her tapestry may not be a simple prediction of what happens next. It could be a visual map of the entire Targaryen story, and Daenerys could be one of the final pieces. This interpretation becomes even more interesting when we look at the imagery surrounding Daenerys. During the Season 2 finale, the show already connected Helena's visions to events far beyond her own immediate life. Daemon sees a series of visions involving the future of the Targaryen dynasty. Among those images are Daenerys' dragon eggs and Daenerys herself with her newborn dragons. The sequence explicitly connects the events of House of the Dragon to the future we eventually see in Game of Thrones. So the idea that Helaena could somehow perceive Daenerys isn't completely new. The show has already established a supernatural connection between Helaena, Daemon's vision, the Targaryen dynasty, and future events. But there is another important question. If Helaena can see Daenerys, does that mean she knows exactly what Daenerys will become? Not necessarily. prophecy in this universe is rarely presented like watching a movie from beginning to end. Characters see pieces, they interpret symbols, and sometimes they completely misunderstand what those visions mean. That's why Helena's ability is so dangerous. Knowing the future doesn't automatically give you control over it. In fact, Helaena often seems trapped by what she sees. She knows terrible things are coming, but she doesn't necessarily know when they will happen or how to prevent them. That's also why the tapestry is so important. Helaena can communicate through images when words aren't enough, and the images may be easier for her to understand than ordinary conversation. The tapestry becomes almost like her personal dream journal. One fan analysis of the finished tapestry identified multiple possible references, including symbols connected to the rat catchers, Aemond, Corlys, Aelys rivers, and a figure interpreted as Daenerys. But these identifications come from fan analysis, not an official HBO explanation. So if the mysterious woman really is Daenerys, what exactly is Helaena predicting? There are several possibilities. The first is Daenerys' birth. After centuries without living dragons, Daenerys becomes the person who brings them back into the world. That would make her incredibly significant to the Targaryen story. The second possibility is Daenerys' transformation into the Dragon Queen. Helaena could be seeing the moment when Daenerys becomes the most powerful Targaryen in generations. But there is an even darker possibility. Helaena may also be seeing Daenerys' eventual destruction. Because Daenerys' story isn't simply about restoring her family's power. It's about how the pursuit of that power ultimately destroys her. And that fits perfectly with the themes of House of the Dragon. The Targaryens repeatedly believe that their bloodline and dragons make them special. They believe they were destined to rule. But generation after generation, that belief leads to tragedy. Rhaenyra's struggle for the Iron Throne destroys her family. Aegon's claim destroys his. Aemond's ambition destroys his, and eventually Daenerys inherits the same burden. So perhaps the image of Daenerys isn't simply saying, "This woman will be queen." It could be showing that the same cycle continues. A Targaryen rises, a Targaryen gains power, dragons return, and eventually the dream collapses again. That would make Daenerys a perfect final image for Helena's tapestry. Because Daenerys is both the resurrection and the ending of the Targaryen dragon dynasty. But there is one more possibility. Maybe Helaena isn't specifically predicting Daenerys at all. Maybe she's seeing what the Targaryen story represents. That's an important distinction. The figure fans believe is Daenerys could potentially be symbolic rather than a literal vision of one specific person. And the show has deliberately made Helena's visions mysterious. Even Fia Sabin has previously emphasized that the audience can interpret Helena's supernatural experiences in different ways. So we shouldn't say with absolute certainty that Helaena literally saw Daenerys. What we can say is that the show has deliberately connected Helena's visions to events beyond her lifetime. And the tapestry appears to continue that idea. The most fascinating part is what this means for Helaena herself. She isn't simply a character who occasionally predicts someone's death. She may be acting as a living historian of the Targaryen bloodline. She sees the pieces of the story that everyone else is too close to understand. Rhaenyra is obsessed with winning the throne. Aemond is obsessed with power. Aegon is obsessed with survival. But Helaena sees the bigger picture. She sees that all of them are only temporary pieces in a much larger story. And if Daenerys really is part of that tapestry, then Helaena is seeing something even bigger. She is seeing the Targaryen dynasty continue long after everyone she knows is dead. She is seeing dragons return. She is seeing another Targaryen rise. And perhaps she is also seeing another Targaryen fall. That would make the tapestry one of the most important objects in the entire series, because it wouldn't simply predict individual deaths. It would show the entire cycle, from the rise of the Targaryens, to the dance of the dragons, to the eventual return of Daenerys, and finally to the destruction of the last great dragon dynasty. And that brings us back to the question, did Helena's tapestry predict Daenerys? The answer is possibly, but it has not been officially confirmed. Asterisk. The show's established mythology absolutely allows for the possibility. Helaena has demonstrated genuine prophetic abilities. The series has already shown her connected to visions involving events far beyond her own lifetime. And the Tapestry appears to contain imagery that fans can reasonably interpret as Daenerys and her dragons. But until the creators explicitly identify that figure, we should treat Helaena predicted Daenerys as a strong theory rather than confirmed canon. And honestly, that uncertainty makes it more fun. Because Helaena has always been the character who sees things that everyone else ignores. Her cryptic words were dismissed, her visions were misunderstood. And now, her tapestry may be telling us something about the future of the Targaryen family that viewers have already seen. Daenerys wasn't just the mother of dragons, she was the final great symbol of the Targaryen dream. And if Helaena really saw her centuries before she was born, then one of the strangest characters in House of the Dragon may have been looking directly into the future of Game of Thrones all along. Maybe Helaena wasn't just stitching the past. Maybe she was stitching the future.